Welcome to another session of our Oceans Roundtables. With me today is Keylor, our Director of Strategy, and Esteban, Technical Lead and AI Enthusiast. Today we're going to be discussing AI agents. It seems like a buzz term, right? Everyone is talking about AI agents, and organizations that don't use AI agents will regret it by the end of 2026. But let's get started from the beginning. AI agents suddenly became a topic that every organization is talking about. What changed? Why is this conversation exploding right now, Keylor, from the commercial perspective? What have you been hearing in the environment?
hmm It is really a combination of factors. From what we are seeing, two of the biggest ones are just the sheer availability of the tools that are now at everybody's disposal to build agents. It has come to the point that previously you needed to have this level of technical expertise to be able to make an implementation. And over the course of 2025, that level has significantly decreased to the point that now all you need to really be able to do is read and follow instructions so that you can make some implementations. Of course, like it happened with other industries, design, for example, with tools like Canva that came in, made it available for everybody to now make great designs. I mean, they weren't top designs, you still needed those high level designers for high stakes work, but now most people could at least do something, right? And I believe that accessibility has been paramount to being able to take this technology into the next level, and this is why people are starting to pick up on it. Beyond that, it's just the natural curve of learning. Like people have been made aware over the course of the last few years, especially the last one, that these things exist, and now they are being exposed to use cases through their context, through content that they see online, through news and other sources. So that availability of information as well is making it so that people understand just how powerful these tools can be and are now realizing how much they themselves could do with them. And I believe finally it's just the normalization of market. In my perspective, over the last couple of years, let's say even a little bit further than that, different models have arisen, right? And it's OpenAI's models and Google's models and Microsoft. Everybody seems to be in that kind of race, and the curve was just extremely steep. Every single month, new developments came up and new features and new functions, and it was very, very hard to stay ahead of that curve. So it was at the point that everything just felt so chaotic. So people didn't really want to jump into a single thing because it felt like it was still in development, right? It felt like you were jumping into a construction building that is still being built, so everything can fall at any given time. It has now come to that point in the market where people are saying, you know what, yes, this thing is here to stay. I need to now understand how I should be making use of this and which tools are now going to be the kind of the primary stack that companies will be leveraging. So I believe those three factors are really, really important, and that they have made it so that now people are realizing 2026 will be their year to start implementing AI into their organizations, and the broader population is realizing that this is coming and it's not going anywhere.
Makes sense. So it follows kind of like the same adoption curve as other technologies in the past for enterprise. So the availability of the information on how to deploy them, the accessibility of the tools to do so, right? You don't need a big team of tech experts to implement these agents, and also the maturity of the technology. That's very interesting. And it makes me think a little bit about, okay, yes, we have all of this. This is a buzz topic in the industry, but in reality, what are AI agents, and kind of like what problems are they solving for the day to day worker or the organization? Esteban, now that we know that these agents are available for everyone, they are the buzz topic for 2026. What are they really, and what problem are they solving for organizations and even the day to day worker?
So agents are, I would compare them to people, kind of, right? But very limited. But yeah, organizations are trying to use them to complete some tasks for them, right? Like they're very good right now at completing tasks that are very repetitive. For example, things that people have to read. They need to conciliate information, for example, from different sources into one final report. They have to compare. Sorry, they have to do like repetitive tasks. For example, finding information on some documents, or yeah, that kind of task that is not super complex, but it's still complex enough so that people have to do it repetitively, frequently.
Okay, so it seems like they're here to make everyone's life easier, right? Professional life and organization wide. Um, from your perspective, Keylor, you are on the day to day talking to different people implementing these agents and finding ways to implement them. Are they adopting them because they truly need them or because they feel pressure not to fall behind? What have you seen out there?
I would say it's both, but there's one aspect that it is important to cover. I think Esteban himself, as we were discussing the other day, we came to this conclusion. But it is both. I mean, on the one hand, it's the FOMO effect, right? Nobody wants to miss out on all of this new technology, and they feel like their competitors are getting ahead. So they know that something will happen, and to an extent, they are correct that if they don't really ride that wave, then they'll be left behind. That is just reality. But what this is uncovering is that so many organizations could have already been doing so much with automation and with more advanced systems than what they currently have that is extremely legacy. Simply the pressure is now there that, hey, if you want to really leverage all of this new stuff that is cool and that is shiny, you really need to get the stuff in order first. What we are seeing, and again, I know Esteban will agree with me here, is we have conversations with customers who come with a use case for us, and 80% of that use case can already be fixed with old technology. And by old technology, I mean 5 years old, 7 years old technology that they already should be implementing, better data architecture, better data engineering, before they even get to the AI portion of it. So yes, the pressure of the market is definitely putting that in people's minds where like, hey, now I need to act. But at the same time, is bringing it up to speed through things that they already should have been doing in the first place. And the other piece to your question was, do they really need it? Yes, they do. But again, first, they need to implement all of this stuff first before they really can leverage that power of AI. And then, of course, they can take off. And there's so much that they can do. And like Esteban said, automating repetitive tasks is one thing, but now we're getting to the point where it's not just that. I mean, there is so much that we would consider repetitive that is still only be able to be done by humans properly that AI agents are quickly picking up on. Like, and this is where I know we'll talk about this in a little bit later, but agent to agent comes into place there, where now it's not just isolated use cases, but entire ecosystems of agents working in tandem to achieve complex organizational goals.
Now, before we get to agents and more complex discussions, I wanted to learn about what does a company need in terms of readiness to implement these agents, right? Is it the right data? Is it the data in the right places? Is there architecture? Is there systems? What is it that makes a company ready to go for these agents? Maybe Esteban, from the technical perspective.
Sure. Yeah, I think, I mean, basically those things that you just mentioned, right? Like you need some data, doesn't have to be too much, which is something that most people also think that they have to have data about everything, that data has to be perfect, super clean. I mean, as the quality is as good as the data, right? But you still can do a lot if you just have some data. So you can do some cleaning, you can do some standardization of the data. You also need systems to gather that data, right? Um, but I would say it's not as scary as some people think it is, but it is also not as simple as some other people think.
Taylor,
I think
anything
you
to add?
first need to. Oh, sorry. Yeah, I think you first need to have a use case or an idea, and sometimes not even that. Like our approach, for example, has been getting to organizations and figuring out what they don't know yet that they could be doing with AI. But again, other companies already kind of know and have a direction like, hey, I know that I need some customer service support. I get hundreds of messages. Can I somehow be replying to all of this through autonomous agents? And the answer is yes. So the second step, like Esteban mentioned, is first you need to have that clear use case, and then you need to have proper data in place and proper systems so that the systems can work. And again, this is an easy fix in a lot of cases, especially for smaller businesses. Big organizations tend to already have cleaner data, so that's not really that big of a challenge for them. For smaller companies, it can easily be done. And one thing that I wanted to add here as well is Esteban did say, hey, this could be scary. I have found, and again, I don't know if this is just personal experience, I have found that some companies don't update systems because they don't have the skills, they don't have the time. It's just not embedded into the way that they perform work, particularly those brick and mortar ones, retail industries, very physical industries. Because in a lot of cases, you have a plan with a bunch of workers who have to write down on a notebook manually every single day, and that's their data, right? So now you don't really need to update that data constantly. So just stop relying so much on the human element of keeping the data clean, and you can also implement agents for that. So that is the beauty of it. Now you allow people to do more in less time, and you reduce the dependency on organizations having all of these strong structures and all of this strong organization, all of this clean data, because you can set it up, and then set up systems to maintain it. So yeah, it's very little really what companies need to actually start doing stuff with this. But I think it's that use case, and then like Seven said, some kind of data.
Right.
I want
Now,
to sorry wanted to also add to, I mean, to put some stress on what Keylor said about the objective, like a use case. It's super important because sometimes, I mean, we also have helped some of the customers find out they don't really need AI, as Keylor mentioned at the beginning, right? Like you may think you need to solve something with AI, but you just maybe solve that problem with regular technologies or older technologies. So yeah, we can also help customers identify if AI is the right solution for the problem they're having. So I think it is more important than what I just said, as Keylor mentioned.
okay. So it seems like, in general, the mindset has shifted to, okay, I do need it, but that's not the case every time, right? Perfect. Now, there is a concept that, it seems that it is very important, and I want to dig in a little bit into what it is and why it matters, right? It's about MCP. MCP stands for Model Context Protocol, but it seems that it's not getting the attention it deserves, or over time, it hasn't been getting that great of attention from companies and tech leads. What problem does MCP try to solve, and what really is MCP?
Well, I think you said it's not getting the attention it deserves. I would argue it may be both. I mean, everybody should know what it is. Everybody should know about it. Everybody should be trying to do something with it, especially if they are pursuing some type of AI integration, especially multimodal agents. But MCP was basically a protocol, as the name stands for, that was developed by Anthropic, right? And what it seeks to achieve is solve some of that architectural chaos that is currently behind agent implementations. And I did said it earlier, where there are so many tools in the market nowadays, and so many different options that you can go with, and so many different language models, and so many different server types, and so many things when you're conducting any type of AI integration, that MCP is trying to bring some standardization to the process, right? It is trying to reduce that chaos into predictable systems and predictable frameworks that agents can operate under, so that now we can achieve similar outcomes every time, and also make our systems a little bit more modular. And by that, I mean, currently, maybe you set up a specific piece of code that solves a specific problem. That's okay for smaller use cases. And where you're thinking bigger scale, and you have these large organizations trying to make implementations, what happens if now I need to remove one piece of my equation, my process, for example, maybe the LLM piece, and I want to replace it with a different organization's piece? What happens then, right? Does my whole system break, or do I have something in place at the baseline of everything that is kind of holding this structure together? And that is essentially what MCP is resolving.
Awesome. So it seems MCP it's about standardization, right? Esteban, anything to add there?
Yeah, I was just going to say, like, there's something important to keep in mind when we talk about LLMs, and it is a probabilistic system, right? Like we're in IT, we're used to talk about deterministic systems, meaning that every time you put the same input, you get the same output, right? But with LLMs, it is a little bit different. It is probabilistic. So with the same input, you may get a little bit different output. So tools are a way to connect to our regular uh, deterministic tools, right? Like or instruments. So we give the LLM some tools or ways to connect to our deterministic systems so that we know that they are going to be reliable in time, right? So MCP is just a way or a set of rules, let's call it, so that the LLMs can use our current systems, right? Or any other system. It can also be other LLM systems. So the protocol is just a way to use those tools so that it can connect with, like, say, the rest of the world.
Mhm. It is like a shared contract, right? It provides the standard for how these models that we're building request information, act upon that information, and deliver results on the other end, right? On the output. So it used to be again that you had to either hard code or customize all of these different modules in an agentic system, and now you can actually just let them have that context, right? And go back to the server and request all of that information so that they can act more effectively. So I think it's going to be revolutionary. I personally believe, and again, having worked in the talent industry, especially in the tech space for so long, I think it's one of those things that will start to pop up on job descriptions. It's starting 2026 and more often from there on, where it's like you need to have this many years with MCP servers or MCP clients or MCP environments.
You now mention servers and clients, MCP servers, MCP clients. There is a distinction there. Uh, what is it, and why is that important in real world use cases?
So, I mean, you can think of server is just a word that, I mean, it seems like magic or something like that. I mean, it's something very simple, right? Like it's literally a servant that you have. Like it's something that is there for you to use, right? And then the client is just something that uses that is there for you. So when you have a server, you have something, let's call it a tool that it's at your disposal, right? And then the client is just something that goes and uses that tool. So MCP servers are basically tools that are ready, like on the toolbox for LLMs or agents to use, right? And then the clients are those connections that take the LLM to use those tools.
Yeah, in essence, I mean, the server is where everything lives, right? You need a server first so that you can build your entire infrastructure on top of. The servers own the data, they own the tools, they own the rules, and the clients are then the ways that the agents interface with that server, right? And actually, MCP has basically three core features that constitute a client, and those are elicitation, routes, and sampling. Elicitation is what enables the server to request specific information when user interactions happen or when system to system interactions happen. The routes are what allows the clients to specify where everything is residing, right? Which directories in the server you should focus on, where to get that information. And then sampling, this is, I think, very interesting. And honestly, one of my favorite parts of MCP. Sampling is how these models request feedback from the user and when they do it. Because, like Esteban said, since this is a probabilistic model, it's still at the point that you need human input throughout certain parts of a process, especially very critical ones, and that is that action moment when the clients understand that they need that user input and they go back for further information.
Okay. And now, to close kind of like this MCP section of or roundtable today, do you see MCPs as enablers or as a forcing function that just came and exposed this existing technical debt, that this lack of standardization in the industry, in the chaos that all of these different tools were causing and not communicating with each other?
Cool. So I think MCP servers are both, right? Like they enforce clean technical debt because they won't be able to use or to work efficiently if data is not good, right? So they may expose that you have some problems before that, but they are also enablers, right? Because they allow you or the agents to use tools that are going to be useful for you at some point. So I think it's a bit of both, depending on the state of the data and the company that is going to use it.
Awesome. Now we're hearing more about agent to agent. Keylor, you mentioned this at the beginning of the session. Uh, Lately, we're hearing more about agent to agent, that single agents. What's driving that shift?
Mhm. Well, it's obviously agents can get really messy if you try to pack them up too hard, right? And the what the industry has discovered, or basically every industry has discovered, is it makes more sense to have multiple agents interface with one another to execute complex tasks than having to put all of it in a single agent. And I'm gonna give you a very, very clean example. Let's say you have any type of retail store, right? Let's say you have an e-commerce system, and then you have, again, back to the customer service case, you have an interface with users where they go to your WhatsApp channel or they send SMS texts, whichever channel they use to communicate with you, they'll be reaching out to ask questions. Now, let's say you also have an inventory system that is very clean and that should be easy to manage with an agent or some sort of automation tool. So now you have two different sets of tasks. And again, this can be many more. And this is the beauty of this, is how you discover then how many more things you can do when you start chaining these agents. But for now, let's focus on those two use cases. What it makes more sense is that instead of having one single core engine that is both responding to user queries and making inventory updates, then you have now a super specialized agent that is only working on the inventory. It understands what there is, it knows the data, it knows how to update it, where those systems are residing, and then you have a super specialized agent that is in charge of responding to customer queries. Now, what can happen here is that you connect both, and then you have a system that is able to intake customer requirements and queries, go back to the inventory agent so that it can gather all of the data that it requires, and go back to the users with responses. And at the same time, if you allow it to make sales, because there's also ways to plug that in, then you can also have that agent communicate to the inventory management agent that it should now be making those inventory changes and updates. So now, again, you have two very specialized systems working through a single environment or ecosystem, and you can chain more of this. You can even chain multiple types of requests, right? Even have like a single customer service agent that talks to different types of customer service agents that all have different specific knowledge bases and different specific sets of information to work from. So it can be as complex as you want it to be or as simple as you want it to be. But the real balance is struck when you find that this is what this agent is capable of doing at its best and in the most efficient way, and then stop there and connect it to agents that can uh, help it talk to the rest of the ecosystem.
Okay, makes sense. And now, what type of tasks benefit most from dedicated agents instead of monolithic designs?
Yeah, I mean, I think Keylor answered a little bit of that questions in his answers, but it's, I would say the complexity is what dictates whether that orchestration of agents makes sense of or not. If complexity starts to increase, then it makes sense to have specialized agents for things. For example, again, if you work on a startup, let's say at the beginning, probably one person can do marketing, sales, and development, right? But then when things starts to get a little bit more complex, you need one person for each of them. Similarly with the agents, right? Like when it starts to get complex and a little bit of too big of a charge for or a load for an agent, you may want to split that into different responsibilities for different agents so that they keep specialized and like within their boundaries, right? That's going to help them be more efficient and more reliable.
Thank you, Esteban. So I want to shift a little bit about two organizations, right? Many organizations realize that they need AI, right? And then they hit a wall. So, what usually goes wrong first here in your experience? Either Keylor or Esteban, please go ahead.
Mhm. From the business perspective, I think it's again clarity on what they're trying to achieve is a big one, and it's no different than trying to build a solution or a platform for a client where first you go into that discovery mode, have to ask questions to really understand what will drive the highest impact for them. That real high ROI case that you can actually say, hey, Eureka, right? This is it. This is where we can implement an agent and it will immediately bring back huge monetary benefit. So understanding that, that is where you have to put on your business analysis hat and then start asking questions and then finally get that use case out of it. So now we have identified what it is that really want to achieve. Then the first problem is where's all of your data? And Seven said it earlier. It's they'll say, hey, well, I mean, it's in a notebook sitting on my desk. That is where I keep track of my clients, or hey, it's on a 90s Rolodex, or it's like those legacy systems are typically the first hurdle. Now, fortunately, most orchestration engines these days have a lot of integration, even with the many legacy systems. But typically, your intention will be to try to migrate this to more modern ways of organizing their data so that then you can use that data to start implementing agents. But this is a part where you have to let the customers understand, hey, this is what you need to have in place. And then the extra challenge on top of that, as I was saying before, is because you need this data for this to function properly, you have to ditch the notebook, right? You have to now go into at least, at the very least, a Google Sheets to update this information, because that's like the baseline level that we can get on databases for like simple information, right? But then you can go as complex as you want. You can install Postgre databases. You can use Airtable, which is kind of out of the box for inventory management and just overall data management that is better than Excel. So that is, in my opinion, the biggest issue. Now, the larger the organization is, and the farther back behind they are on data engineering good practices, the more difficult it'll be to take them from here to here, so that you can then start working on use cases.
Awesome. And Taylor, are agents exposing problems that were already there, but easier to ignore before? Right? We have been in the software development world and tech world for quite a while now. These problems might have been easier to ignore in the past, but now companies need to solve them. What are those type of problems? You mentioned data. Any other, or would you like to dig more into that?
I want Esteban first to answer from the technical perspective. I have a note to include more so from the soft perspective.
Perfect. Esteban.
Yeah, I mean, I would say yes. The thing is, like, humans are very intelligent, right? Like, sometimes we just forget that. So when we do our jobs, we're compensating for the lack of good data, for the lack of data at all. Like, we're filling some holes that have been there, right? When we're talking about AI, although it is still very smart, it is not a human. So it cannot compensate for those things. So then it is when those things come to surface, right? So it's just to remember that humans are really, really intelligent. What makes you realize what's going on with AI when you face some problems.
Exactly. And that's exactly right. But on the flip side of what Esteban just mentioned, yes, that is true. I mean, again, maybe I'm running my organization very successfully with my notebook sitting on my desk, just relying on me not losing that notebook ever, because then I'm screwed, right? But again, AI cannot do that. So now, yes, on the one hand, this highlights where humans excel at making do with ambiguous information and fill the gaps and complete patterns. But at the same time, you bring in agentic AI, and the first question that comes to mind is my job at risk, right? Is my, hey, they are bringing this now in, and this is what I do. So where does my job stand now? So it is an issue that it highlights. There are many roles in organizations that are redundant, unnecessary, and have been, frankly, unnecessary for several years now. Because, as I said before, there already are tools that can replace a lot of people, and simply AI is just highlighting that. Now, the intention there is never to replace the human and just take people's jobs. It is instead how can I now elevate this person into a less operational role where they behave less like a bot or like what a bot can do today and more like a human and actually elevate into this higher complexity, more mentally challenging, more human interfacing cases, and then really take off in their careers and within their organizations. That is, I believe, one of the other issues that bringing agents highlights, and that is most organizations are poorly structured, even from that human resource perspective.
Awesome. So now we see organizations adopting AI, and a recent McKinsey study show us that companies were spending large amount of money on AI implementations, but they were not seeing the return on investment because of adoption. So adoption is one of the hardest parts of the AI implementation roadmap. Um, how important is it for an organization that implements an AI project to have a clear adoption map within employers and avoid resistance, as you mentioned, Keylor?
Well, that is a very good one. I think it's twofold. The answer to that would be twofold because on one hand, there's the most basic level of AI implementation you can make, which is go to your organization and say, hey, which tools are you guys using? Tell us which use cases you're leveraging AI for, and understanding that maybe they are now writing emails to sound a little better with their colleagues with ChatGPT, right? Like those are the most basic use cases, and it's easy to get people to adopt those. Where the real hurdle is and where most of the money should go to is in understanding how can people now challenge their own roles and say, is it what I'm doing automatable? Is it, can an agent do what I'm doing today? Maybe even challenge themselves, maybe even try to accomplish that and actually adopt AI to the extent that they are now replacing themselves so that they can elevate into further roles. And of course, again, I know what I'm saying, it sounds kind of crazy, like who the hell would want to replace themselves? It is just inevitable that if you're not challenging yourself in that way, somebody else will, either somebody else with the tools to do it or maybe a third party that knows how to do it and wants to take your money. So that adoption portion is the most difficult, kind of coming to the realization that, hey, maybe my job can be replaced and should I be part of it? Or should I just sit silently and not say anything? Because again, many people do know that their jobs are easily automatable. So that's one of the pieces of it is how do you challenge people to look at AI adoption in a more in-depth form. Then the other part of it is if you're depending on people kind of adopting the AI tools that you're implementing, then you're already failing half the effort. Because again, some of the systems shouldn't need people to adopt them. They can be implemented right away, and then you're just telling the human, "Hey, this is where you now interface with the system. You used to do all of this. Now you stop here, and the system will do the rest." At that point, it is really easy to adopt because it's just a set of instructions. So I think that investment should more so be focused on what can I achieve reliably with these AI tools and integrations rather than what can I achieve reliably if my people adopt it? Because then again, you have to question yourself what type of AI integration you're making. Is it a employee driven adoption where it's like you're giving them tools and just kind of relying on them making a cultural shift, or you're actually making an implementation that now you're placing your humans around so that they can be more efficient. That I believe is that adoption challenge.
I think there's something important also to mention in there, and it was one of the questions that we answered before, and it is why are you implementing AI, right? Like, if you're just doing it because you're of your fear of missing out, it's probably the wrong reason. You're just going to spend that money in something that's not going to be valuable for your company. So, when you find a real use case for the AI, then it's a lot more likely that it is going to pay out, right? Like if you're just trying to put AI because AI is hype, then it's probably not going to be worth the money that you're spending on it.
Mhm. And in that, David, what I think is also critical, or at least I have come to discover through having these conversations, is maybe decision makers want AI, right? People don't. Like employees don't. They don't want AI. It scares them. It's and again with good reason. But then that is where I believe most implementations are failing, either because the agencies themselves don't know how to do this, or because we're building our language around AI being this superhuman entity that will now do everything and take over everything. So what we are building currently at Oceans, and so part of the framework that we've been trying to coin here and build on top of is, and we're trying to call this mindful AI, is a lens, essentially a filter through which we can put all of this AI big scary language into palatable terms for what it entails for the employees, right? Hey, we're not coming here to replace you, first and foremost, right? The human autonomy and the cognitive and offloading and all of these aspects that we know should be part of conversation, put them through that lens, right? And then show people, hey, this is what we intend to do, and this is your role in all of this. I believe that is permanent. And again, this model is built on several pillars that we're still building, but we believe that will be key to making this successful. It is making people part of these integrations and translating all of this big, scary, um, ambiguous stuff into palatable, pleasant terms that people will actually be on board with.
Great. So it seems like roles are actually evolving. Some will seem to be disappearing, but they are actually evolving into something else, right? Now, from the organization perspective, and just to finish here, I want to hear both of your opinions. How does responsible AI adoption looks like? Keylor, I think you touched on it with mindful AI, to touch on that topic a little bit. I would like to hear your opinion on how does a responsible adoption of AI looks like in a company.
Mhm. That brings me to a story actually, and a very recent story. And again, in this role, I get to speak to a lot of brilliant minds, a lot of decision makers, CEOs, founders from varying sizes of organizations. And I was speaking to one of them over dinner, and I was asking him, like, he was just describing how they were working on a system that could potentially replace. He already had accounted for close to 40 people in the organization. So they knew they were working on a system that could replace people internally, right? And again, you could take this from many different angles. You could say, why would you do that? You want to actively replace people? Like, again, give it a negative light, but at the same time, it's technology. Things will continue to evolve whether you want it or not. So that is what they were working on. And then my question was, what happens then? What happens once this system is complete? Once this is over and this is actually working? Do you get rid of these 40 people? And his answer surprised me a little bit because, again, I was expecting a more black or white answer. On the black side, like, yes, of course, I have to let them go. Now I have a tool that can do all of it, and I don't need to pay them anymore. And on the other side, we could say, hey, I'm going to be very altruistic and then just let them keep their jobs and just keep paying them. And hey, now because I can do this more efficiently, I will let people work for free. Right. So, again, obviously very unrealistic case as well. But what he said was, you know, I know at least half of those 40 people that I have. I see how they are adopting AI tools. I see how they can be part of a broader strategy, and I see how they can evolve into more complex roles even after I implement this tool. The other half, I'm not sure about, right? And then I believe when you ask the question of how can you implement AI responsibly, you have to ask it from, I mean, is it the angle of the decision makers that are making these implementations because it makes sense technologically and revenue wise? Is it from the perspective of the people that this could replace? It has many different shapes and angles, but in my opinion, the best you can do is look at the people that you have by their first names, John, Jack, and Charles, or whoever are in your team, and say, this is what I see them doing after I make these implementations. This is where I believe they can elevate themselves. Give them a warning, right? Let them know that this is coming. Let them know how they can better position themselves to be continue to be part of your broader strategy without really stopping, right? And I think if you keep that element in mind and just don't blindside people with these things, you can be pretty successful. You can keep your team and achieve way more.
Makes sense.
But
Esteban, anything to add?
sorry, one small thing to add. I mean, I think most of the times when we think about people being replaced by AI, we're thinking like organizations are trying to do the same with less, right? But I think most of the times what happens is organizations are always trying to do more, right? Like we're we're going to have some resources freed up so that we were going to try to do more with that, right? Instead of trying to do the same with less. See, is that clear?
Makes sense. Makes sense. So
That's great that Seven said that, because I mean, another person that I spoke to, right, as we were discussing potential use cases, and we identified that, hey, this is a very clear high ROI yielding case that you have here, where you could be doing this with AI, and the response was like, but that's Tom's job, right? I really like Tom. People don't want to let go of their Toms. They want to keep their Toms. They just want Tom to now be able to do twice what he's doing, because it's now easier for him. So I think it's at some point, organizations are not just trying to cut heads and again reduce in size. They want more. They just want more. They just want to see what's beyond that horizon of what they could do with AI.
awesome. And it seems AI agents are here to help them do that. 2026 seems like an exciting year. If you're watching this, please follow us, share this with your friends and colleagues. And thank you for watching another roundtable. Esteban, Keylor, it has been great hearing about AI agents and learning with you. Uh, Thank you very much.
Thank you.